On a typical Tuesday morning at the Fairmont Business Center in Arlington, Virginia, the lobby was as uneventful as ever. The room was filled with rows of gray armchairs, artificial plants, and large ceramic pots, all set against the backdrop of a front desk manned by a disinterested receptionist. The atmosphere was quiet. People entered and left, mostly in silence, avoiding eye contact as they went about their day. But today was different. Ethan Johnson walked in, exuding a quiet confidence that suggested he knew exactly where he was headed. Dressed in dark jeans and a crisp button-down shirt, he carried a sleek black laptop bag slung over his shoulder. His posture was attentive yet relaxed, and as he passed through the glass double doors, he nodded politely at the security guard stationed by the front desk. The guard, however, didn't respond, his expression blank as he continued to stare at his phone. Ethan made his way to the waiting area, standing near the wall while scrolling through his phone. His Bluetooth earpiece was tucked in, and he occasionally spoke in a low voice, too soft for others to hear. To the average observer, he appeared to be preparing for an important business meeting, but not to everyone. From behind the reception desk, a newly hired administrative assistant named Lily Parker squinted at Ethan, a sense of unease creeping over her. She leaned toward her colleague and whispered, "Do you know that guy?" The other woman glanced up briefly, shrugged, and returned to her typing, dismissing Lily's concern. But Lily couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She observed Ethan pacing slightly, mumbling to himself, and her mind began to connect the dots in a way that painted a suspicious picture. Instead of approaching Ethan to inquire if he needed assistance, Lily picked up the desk phone and dialed building security. "Hi, we've got someone out front who's behaving oddly. You might want to check him out," she said, using the term acting suspicious, without fully understanding the implications of her words. Meanwhile, upstairs, Ethan's contact at Graybridge Analytics was running late, completely unaware of the storm brewing below. Unbeknownst to Ethan, a call had just been placed that would dramatically alter the next few minutes of his life. Downstairs, two police officers, Officer Jake Thompson and Officer Mia Ramirez, were already arriving in the parking lot, responding to Lily's vague report. The dispatch had labeled it a potential suspicious person inside a commercial property. No weapons, no direct threats, just enough concern to warrant a visit. As they pulled into the lot, Jake glanced at Mia and said, "Suspicious? Could be nothing, or it could be something." Mia, always the one to gather more information before acting, nodded quietly. They exited their patrol car and approached the entrance. Inside, Lily anxiously watched the patrol car from the window, arms crossed tightly, as if waiting for validation of her worries. Ethan, still oblivious to the impending confrontation, continued to scroll through files on his phone. He shifted his weight to one side, opened a document, and quietly spoke into his microphone. Subject confirmed. Location secured. Waiting for contact. Just then, the lobby doors swung open, and Jake's authoritative voice echoed across the marble floor. "Sir, could we speak with you for a moment?" Ethan looked up, momentarily confused. "Sure, what is this about?" he replied, his tone calm. "Mind stepping away from the wall with your hands visible?" Jake requested. Ethan blinked, not panicking, but clearly caught off guard. "I'm with the Bureau. Just here for a scheduled meeting," he explained, trying to de-escalate the situation. Jake raised an eyebrow. "Bureau of what?" As tension mounted in the lobby, the reactions of those present were palpable. Lily, still behind the reception desk, felt her heart race. She wished she could take back her call, realizing the weight of her words. In this moment, everything was about to change. As the tension in the lobby escalated, Ethan Johnson stood with an air of calmness, but inside, he felt a surge of confusion and concern. Officer Jake Thompson, maintaining a firm stance, continued to question him, his voice unyielding. "Can you tell me what bureau you're with?" he asked, his eyes narrowing slightly, displaying a mix of suspicion and authority. "I'm with the FBI," Ethan replied, his tone steady. "I'm here for a scheduled meeting regarding a surveillance task. My credentials are in my bag." He gestured toward the black laptop bag at his feet, trying to convey his professionalism. Jake's posture remained tense, his eyes scanning Ethan's face for any sign of deception. "Sir, we need you to sit on the floor, hands where we can see them," Jake instructed, raising his voice slightly to emphasize the seriousness of the situation. Ethan hesitated for a moment, but then complied, slowly lowering himself to the cold tile floor, his palms pressed flat against the surface. Across the lobby, Mia Ramirez observed carefully, her instincts heightened. She took a half-step closer, keeping her eyes on both Ethan and Jake. "Jake, let's take a moment here," she said, trying to inject some reason into the rapidly escalating scenario. "We need to verify his identity before we go any further." Ethan remained calm as he sat on the floor, his breathing even. He was acutely aware of the officers' movements, noting where their hands hovered and the tension that filled the air. He could feel the weight of the situation, not just on him, but on everyone present. The receptionist, Lily, stood frozen behind her desk, her earlier confidence now shattered. She shifted her gaze between Ethan and the officers, uncertainty etched on her face. "Are you armed, sir?" Jake asked, his voice firm as he kept a wide stance, prepared for any sudden movements. Ethan replied evenly, "Yes, I have a bureau-issued Glock 19 concealed on my right hip. I am fully authorized to carry it." His calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the anxiety radiating from those around him. Mia glanced at Jake, her expression conflicted. "We should check the bag," she suggested, trying to ease the situation. Ethan nodded. "You can check it yourself. My badge is in the side pocket." As Mia crouched down to unzip the bag, Ethan remained perfectly still, his eyes locked onto Jake's. The room was thick with tension, and the silence felt heavy as they awaited verification. The lobby doors opened again, and 2 security guards entered, taking in the scene. They exchanged glances, sensing the intensity of the moment, but neither spoke. Mia extracted the badge case from the bag and opened it, revealing Ethan's credentials. She studied the badge closely, noting the photo and the information confirming his identity. "Looks legit," she murmured, glancing back at Jake, who still seemed reluctant to relax his stance. "Let's call it in," Mia urged, sensing the urgency to resolve the standoff. But Jake hesitated, still wrestling with his own doubts. "We need to be sure," he muttered, his eyes still locked on Ethan. At that moment, Ethan spoke up. "I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm just doing my job. And I assure you, I'm not a threat. You can call Agent Sarah Mitchell at the FBI field office in D.C. for confirmation." The tension in the room remained palpable, and the silence felt almost suffocating. Lily, still behind the desk, felt an overwhelming sense of regret wash over her. She realized that her call had led to this precarious situation, and she wished she had taken the time to ask Ethan who he was instead of jumping to conclusions. As Ethan sat there, waiting for the officers to make their next move, the stakes felt higher than ever. Everyone in the lobby was caught in a moment that would define how they viewed each other and the choices they made in the face of uncertainty. The atmosphere in the lobby was charged with tension as Ethan Johnson sat on the cold tile floor, his palms flat beside him. Officer Jake Thompson loomed over him, still skeptical, while Mia Ramirez attempted to assess the situation more objectively. Ethan maintained his calm demeanor, even as he could feel the weight of their scrutiny pressing down on him. "Are you going to check his ID? Or are we just going to stand here all day?" Mia finally broke the silence, her tone a mix of frustration and concern. She could see that Jake was beginning to waver, but he was still reluctant to fully relax his guard. "Let's just give it a moment," Jake replied, his voice low but firm. He was torn between his training to remain vigilant and the mounting evidence that suggested Ethan was telling the truth. Mia took a step closer, her eyes flicking between Ethan and Jake, sensing that they needed to resolve this before it escalated further. "Look, I understand you have your protocol," Ethan said, his voice steady but firm. "But I assure you, I'm not a threat. I'm just here to do my job." He maintained eye contact with Jake, hoping to convey the sincerity in his words. Just then, the elevator doors dinged, interrupting the standoff. All eyes turned to the elevator as it opened, revealing a woman in a sharp navy pantsuit, Agent Sarah Mitchell, Ethan's supervisor from the FBI. She stepped out, her expression shifting from one of casual readiness to immediate concern as she took in the scene before her. Ethan sitting on the floor, flanked by 2 officers. "What on earth is happening here?" Sarah's authoritative voice cut through the tension like a knife. She walked toward them, her presence commanding attention. "Why is my lead investigator on the floor?" Jake hesitated, caught off guard by Sarah's sudden appearance. "Ma'am, we responded to a call about a suspicious person. This man was reported as acting strangely," he explained, his voice faltering under her scrutiny. Sarah's eyes narrowed as she looked between Ethan and the officers. "This man," she said, pointing to Ethan, "is Special Agent Ethan Johnson. He's here under my direction for a scheduled meeting. You have his badge in your hand, so I'll ask again. Why is he on the floor?" Mia, sensing Sarah's frustration, stepped in. "We were told he was behaving suspiciously, and we had to follow protocol," she defended, trying to justify their actions. "Did he resist? Did he threaten anyone?" Sarah pressed, her voice calm but sharp. "No," Mia replied, glancing at Jake, who remained silent, the weight of the situation settling heavily on him. Sarah turned her attention back to Ethan, who was still seated calmly. "Ethan, you good?" she asked, her tone softening slightly. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just waiting," he replied, brushing off his jeans as he stood up, the tension slowly dissipating from his posture. As the officers processed the unfolding events, the lobby felt charged with unspoken realizations. Jake's mind raced as he replayed the scenario, his actions, the assumptions he had made without evidence, and how close they had come to a serious mistake. 7 minutes, Ethan spoke up, his voice steady. "That's how long I sat there while you looked at me like I was a threat." The gravity of his words hung in the air, forcing everyone present to confront the biases that had led to this moment. Lily, still behind the desk, felt a wave of guilt wash over her. She had initiated this chain of events, and now she realized the impact of her hasty judgment. The atmosphere shifted as everyone began to recognize the deeper implications of their actions. Sarah handed Jake a business card, her expression firm. "If you need to verify Ethan's identity, my direct number is on there. But let's save time. He's been with the Bureau for over a decade, and I've worked with him for 6 years. You'd find more accolades on his record than many agents do in their entire careers." With that, the scene began to shift from one of confrontation to a more contemplative atmosphere. Everyone was left to reflect on the moments that had led them here and the importance of questioning their assumptions before acting. As the intensity of the moment began to fade, Agent Sarah Mitchell remained a steady presence in the lobby, her eyes fixed firmly on Officer Jake Thompson. The tension that had filled the air moments before now felt like a heavy silence, punctuated only by the soft hum of the building's ventilation system. Ethan Johnson stood tall, brushing off the remnants of the encounter as he took a deep breath, trying to regain his composure. "Why is my lead investigator on the floor?" Sarah repeated, her voice cutting through the stillness. The question hung in the air, challenging everyone present to confront their assumptions. Jake, still caught off guard, struggled to find the right words. "We received a call about a suspicious person. And when we arrived, he was talking into a Bluetooth earpiece. It raised some flags," he explained, attempting to justify his actions. But the conviction in his voice was waning. Sarah's gaze remained unyielding. "So you saw a man, wearing a suit, standing in the lobby talking into a phone, and decided to put him on the floor. That's your protocol?" The disappointment in her tone was palpable, and it struck a chord with both Jake and his partner, Mia Ramirez. Mia shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Jake before speaking. "We just wanted to be cautious. We didn't know who he was," she said, her voice quieter now, as if the weight of the situation was sinking in. "Caution is one thing, but you let bias dictate your actions," Sarah responded, her words sharp but not unkind. She turned to Ethan, who had been observing the exchange with a mixture of patience and disappointment. "Ethan, are you okay?" she asked, her tone softening. "I'm fine, just a bit shaken up," Ethan replied, his voice steady. "But it's frustrating to be treated this way, especially when I'm here to do my job." He looked at Jake, who was visibly struggling with the implications of his decisions. "I didn't mean for this to happen," Jake said, finally finding his voice. "I thought I was doing the right thing." "Thinking you're doing the right thing doesn't absolve you of the consequences," Sarah replied, her eyes narrowing. "You were minutes away from ruining a career and potentially jeopardizing lives because of a hasty judgment." The gravity of her words settled over the group, and Ethan felt the weight of the moment. This wasn't just about him. It was about the systemic issues that led to such misunderstandings. 7 minutes, Ethan reiterated, his voice calm but firm. "I sat on the floor while you all looked at me like I was a threat." It's moments like these that reveal how bias can shape our perceptions and actions. Just then, the elevator chimed again, drawing attention away from the tense conversation. A Graybridge executive stepped out, pausing to take in the scene before him. A federal agent on the floor, 2 officers standing nearby, and a receptionist who seemed deeply uncomfortable. The executive's brows furrowed in confusion, but he quickly moved on, sensing the weight of the situation. Back in the lobby, Sarah handed Ethan a reassuring nod. "Let's go ahead with the meeting," she said, her tone professional. "We can address this later." As Ethan picked up his laptop bag, he shot a glance at Jake and Mia. "I hope you both take this as a lesson," he said, his voice steady. "You can't let assumptions dictate your actions, especially in our line of work." The atmosphere shifted as Ethan walked toward the elevator, leaving behind a moment that would resonate with Jake and Mia long after he had gone. They were left to grapple with the uncomfortable truth that the biases they held could lead to destructive consequences, and they would need to confront these realities moving forward. As the doors to the elevator closed, the silence in the lobby was thick, filled with unspoken reflections, and the realization that change was necessary, not just for Ethan, but for everyone involved. As Ethan Johnson exited the elevator with Agent Sarah Mitchell, the tension in the lobby began to dissipate, but the weight of what had just transpired lingered in the air. Ethan felt a mix of relief and frustration as he moved past the security guards and made his way toward the conference room. He was grateful for Sarah's intervention, but couldn't shake off the lingering unease of being treated like a suspect in a place where he was supposed to feel secure. Meanwhile, Officer Jake Thompson and Officer Mia Ramirez remained in the lobby, processing the confrontation they had just witnessed. The reality of their actions began to settle heavily on their shoulders. Jake looked at Mia, his expression a mix of regret and confusion. "I thought I was being careful," he admitted, running a hand through his hair. "But I can't believe how quickly things escalated." Mia nodded slowly, her brow furrowed in contemplation. "I know, but we should have asked more questions instead of jumping to conclusions. We need to be better than this," she replied, her voice soft but firm. The weight of their choices pressed down on them, and Mia felt a pang of guilt, realizing that their assumptions had almost led to a serious incident. "Did you see how Ethan handled everything?" Jake asked, shaking his head in disbelief. "He was so calm. I would have been furious in his position." "Yeah, he handled it like a pro," Mia agreed. "But it's not just about how he reacted. It's about what this says about us. We need to confront our biases head on." Just then, a thought struck Jake. What if we're not the only ones who need to change? What if this is a bigger issue within the department? Mia met his gaze, realizing the truth in his words. "We have to start somewhere, though. We can't keep making these same mistakes. If we don't address this, how can we expect others to do better?" As they stood there, the receptionist Lily emerged from behind her desk, her expression still tense. "I'm really sorry about what happened," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean to cause any trouble. I just thought I was being cautious." Jake sighed, understanding her perspective, but also feeling the need to address the issue. "We all make judgments based on what we see. But it's important to remember that our assumptions can have real consequences," he replied gently. "It's a lesson for all of us." Lily nodded, her eyes downcast. "I didn't realize how quickly things could escalate. I should have just asked him who he was." "Next time, that's exactly what you should do," Mia encouraged her. "We can all learn from this. It's about communication and understanding, not acting on instinct alone." As they spoke, the atmosphere in the lobby shifted from one of discomfort to a more reflective tone. The three of them shared a silent agreement that they needed to do better, not just for themselves, but for everyone they served. Meanwhile, in the conference room, Ethan and Sarah were discussing the details of their upcoming meeting. Sarah could sense Ethan's lingering frustration, and she leaned in slightly. "You handled that situation remarkably well, Ethan. I know it wasn't easy," she said, her tone supportive. "Thanks, Sarah," Ethan replied, though his voice held a hint of weariness. "I just wish it didn't have to come to that. It shouldn't be this way." "I completely agree," Sarah said, her expression serious. "But your patience in that moment may have opened their eyes to the biases we all carry. It's a hard lesson, but it's necessary." Ethan nodded, appreciating her acknowledgement. "I just hope they take it to heart. We can't afford to overlook these issues, especially in our line of work." As the meeting progressed, Ethan felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that the road ahead would require more than just awareness. It would demand action, dialogue, and a commitment to change. Back in the lobby, Jake, Mia, and Lily continued their conversation, each reflecting on their roles in the situation. They understood that this moment had the potential to spark a broader discussion within their department, one that could lead to meaningful change. The experience had opened their eyes to the importance of empathy, communication, and the need for vigilance against their own biases, lessons that would resonate long after the day had ended. As the meeting concluded, Ethan Johnson packed his laptop into his bag, feeling a mix of relief and lingering discomfort from the events that had unfolded earlier. Agent Sarah Mitchell watched him closely, sensing the weight on his shoulders. "You handled yourself exceptionally well today," she said, offering a supportive smile. but I know it's been a long morning." "Thanks, Sarah," Ethan replied, his voice steady but tired. "It's just frustrating. I never expected to be treated that way, especially in a professional setting." He glanced around the conference room, still feeling the adrenaline from the confrontation in the lobby. As they exited the conference room, Ethan felt a sense of urgency to address the broader implications of what had just happened. "We need to talk to the higher-ups about this," he suggested. "This isn't just about what happened to me. It's about the biases that exist within the department. We can't let this go unchecked." Sarah nodded in agreement. "Absolutely. We should set up a meeting with the chief and discuss ways to improve training on implicit bias and communication. It's crucial that everyone understands the consequences of their actions." Meanwhile, back in the lobby, Officer Jake Thompson and Officer Mia Ramirez continued their discussion, reflecting on the day's events. Jake felt a gnawing sense of guilt. "I can't shake the feeling that I almost ruined Ethan's career," he admitted, his voice heavy. "What if he hadn't been who he said he was?" Mia placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You made a mistake, yes, but it's important that we learn from it. We have to hold ourselves accountable and ensure that it doesn't happen again," she replied. "This is a wake-up call for both of us." Lily, the receptionist, listened intently. "I really didn't think about how my call would impact Ethan. I just saw someone who looked out of place and panicked," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I feel awful for not asking him directly who he was." "It's a common reaction," Mia replied gently. "We all have biases that can lead us to make quick judgments. The key is to recognize them and know how to respond differently in the future." As they spoke, the atmosphere shifted from one of discomfort to determination. There was a newfound understanding among them, and they realized that their collective experiences could lead to positive change. Ethan and Sarah re-entered the lobby, just as Jake and Mia were finishing their conversation. Ethan's eyes met Jake's, and he could see the sincerity in his expression. "I'm sorry for how things went down earlier," Jake said, his voice earnest. "I should have handled it better." Ethan nodded, appreciating the apology. "I appreciate that, Jake. It's important for all of us to recognize how our assumptions can lead to dangerous situations. I'm not angry. I just want us to do better." "Let's work together on this," Sarah interjected, her voice strong. "We can create a training session focused on addressing biases and improving communication. It's crucial for the integrity of the department and the safety of everyone involved." Jake and Mia exchanged glances, both realizing the importance of this initiative. "We're on board," Mia said firmly. "We need to make sure this doesn't happen again." As the conversation continued, Ethan felt a sense of hope. This experience, although difficult, had sparked a dialogue that could lead to meaningful change. They began brainstorming ideas for the training sessions, discussing how to engage their colleagues and encourage open conversations about bias and perception. As Ethan prepared to leave, he turned to Jake and Mia. "I want you both to know that I'm here to help in any way I can. If we work together, we can create an environment that fosters understanding and prevents these situations from arising in the future." With that, Ethan stepped outside into the overcast afternoon, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Although the earlier incident had shaken him, it also opened the door for important conversations that could reshape their workplace culture. As he walked toward his car, he couldn't shake the feeling that change was possible. It would take time, effort, and courage, but it was a necessary journey. Inside the lobby, Jake, Mia, and Lily remained, each of them committed to confronting their biases and fostering a more inclusive environment. The day's events had transformed them, and they were ready to take the first steps toward change together.